Hi, everybody. I'm Mike. This is a bunch of Guns and Gear Reviews, and you are listening to The Right of the People, where we use the first to defend the second every Friday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. So uncover your keyboards and fire up your fingers. Time to join the conversation.
Hey, everybody out there in YouTube's and Gun channels. How are you doing on this fine Friday, the 1st of June? Glad that so many of you could make it this evening. Let's see who we got out there on YouTube so far. We have, well, right now, Midnight Range and Patriot in the Dark are in there talking. We had Miles Away. Is it Miles Away? Had him in there. Miles Ahead, I'm sorry. Had him in there earlier. Over on the Gun channel side, earlier we had a couple guys. Now it looks like it's just me, but that's okay. They'll trickle in. On the panel, we've got a pretty good-sized panel for me tonight. So let me go over and say hi to them. Matt from 50 Caliber Karma, how you doing?
Oh, I'm outstanding. It's a very exciting month for me. This is my birthday month. And just apparently to show their celebration, my entire county is throwing a fair in my honor.
Oh, well, isn't that nice?
Well, I see a sign every day that says, San Joaquin County Fair, June 14th through 17th. And I assume the part that says, and Matt's birthday party just fell off.
Ah, okay. Well, maybe you should go put it back up. Roll call. How you doing, buddy?
What's going on, man? Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. Always good to hear what you have to say about this stuff. Ryan, glad you can make it tonight.
Yes, sir. Good to be here.
And as always, the very opinionated Squib. How you doing, buddy?
Hey.
Hey.
All that at once.
He suddenly does his Buckley imitation. That's great. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get this going because we do have some things to talk about tonight. First thing I wanted to touch on was it kind of fits in the be careful what you wish for category. Publix suspends political giving amid anti-NRA protest. By Kent Thurber. This is from thegunwriter.com. And Kent notes that the story comes from the AP. Parkland, Florida. Survivors of the Parkland school shooting lay down in die-ins at 2 Publix supermarkets Friday. This is on May 26th. To protest the chain's support for a gubernatorial candidate aligned with the National Rifle Association as the company announced the suspension of political contributions. The students from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School shouted, USA, not NRA, and caused brief delays at the checkout as customers navigated carts around them on the floor. I'd run their ass over. Pro-NRA counter-protesters also showed up at one store, and 2 men almost came to blows before police intervened. A lot of people don't support who Publix is supporting, said Haley Shepard, a 15-year-old sophomore at Stoneman Douglas, who joined 13 fellow protesters on the floor for about 10 minutes at one of the stores. It's going to reflect on them as a brand and people shopping there. Publix has been criticized by the students for supporting Agriculture Commissioner and gubernatorial candidate Adam Putnam, a Republican who has called himself, quote, a proud NRA sellout. The activists have called for a boycott on the supermarket. Publix announced earlier this week that it would reevaluate its donations amid the outcry. In another statement Friday, company spokeswoman Maria Bruce, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, B-R-O-U-S, Maria Bruce said the chain would halt its contributions for now as it continues that reevaluation. Senior David Hogg, one of the most vocal student activists for gun reform and one of the founders of March for Our Lives, helped organize the protest. It came a week after 10 were killed in a high school in Santa Fe, Texas, and the same day that authorities said an Indiana middle school student opened fire inside his science classroom, wounding a classmate and a teacher, who, by the way, named Jason Seaman, is an absolute hero. He jumped on that kid with absolutely nothing to fight him with, nothing to protect himself with, no gun, no weapon, no body armor, no nothing, and stop the kid from killing other people. So his name should be shouted from the rooftops instead of these scumbag killers. At any point. At any rate, I digress. At one point, a counter-protester, Bill Karakoff, stuck his middle finger an inch from Hogg's face outside the grocery store just a few miles from the school where 17 of Hogg's classmates and teachers were gunned down. There are millions and millions of people who don't worship everything that comes out of his mouth, said Karakoff, who joined about a dozen NRA supporters who counter-protested inside the store. He said the students' anger towards Publix should be directed at the sheriff's office and school district for failing to protect them. Hogg said such reactions are common, saying the media has falsely portrayed him as someone who wants to seize guns. Dude, the media is just reporting the shit you're saying, you little twerp. He said he supports the Second Amendment, but why is there always a but from these people? Wants tighter regulations, universal background checks, and training for people who own AR-15s and similar semi-automatic rifles. Publix has been a strong Putnam supporter. Campaign finance records show that Publix, its top executives and board members, and their family members have donated more than $750,000 altogether to Putnam or his political committee. A former top Publix executive who is related to the chairman of Putnam's committee has donated an additional $65,000. The suspension announced Friday applies only to money from the company, which has given $413,000 to Putnam over the 3 years. The supermarket chain is one of a long line of Florida corporations that has helped bankroll Putnam's candidacy. Over the last 3 years, Putnam has also gotten substantial financial help from Walt Disney Company, Florida Power and Light, and U.S. Sugar. Disney has given more than $800,000 to Putnam's political committee, including $50,000 check it gave him earlier this month. Publix said it supports candidates focused on building the economy. We regret that some of our political contributions have led to an unintentional customer divide instead of our desire to support a growing economy in Florida. What this article doesn't mention is that they also cut off donating funds to liberal organizations like, I believe, Planned Parenthood, etc. They gave it pretty evenly across the political spectrum, both to conservative and liberal causes, and now they're not giving anything to anybody because these kids want to run their mouths. So I think it's good. You don't want us to give to anybody? You don't want us to give? Fine, we won't give. Pound salt. Of course, that's what I would have told them anyway, and I wouldn't have allowed them to change what I was going to do. What do you guys think? Should Publix have told them to pound sand, or do you like the approach they took of stopping all giving, or what do you think they should have done?
Okay, so for those in the audience who don't know what Publix is, Publix, or have never been to one, it's a grocery store. It's like a Kroger. It's got a deli, and usually has a coffee shop in there and everything else. They're known for charging a little bit more for their groceries, but treating their employees better. I have shopped at them in Tennessee and Florida, and I have to say that I like the stores. I like what they have to offer. I like the way I get treated by the employees when I'm there. And whenever we're out of state, we'll stop in and maybe pick up some wine or something like that and bring back. Does anybody think that maybe they were donating to this candidate because of his stance on labor, or on his stance on taxes, or his stance on something that would benefit the company, not really caring about his stance on the Second Amendment? Kind of like what we were talking about in the pre-chat about somebody who's pro-gun, but they've always been a Democrat, so they vote Democrat. It's not that they are anti-2A, but they've always been a Democrat. So I think that, you know, David Hogg and the rest of his buddies going out there doing this, they're trying to make it sound like that this company is organized and trying to support the Second Amendment or pro-Second Amendment stuff, when really that may not be why they donated to this candidate at all. And companies do that. They donate to the candidates that are going to do stuff that is going to help their business in the future. It's normal stuff to do. And I don't think that anybody's bringing that to light. Also, David Hogg demanded that Publix give his organization there $1 million, and Publix told him no. And you're right. Yeah, they said, we're not only going to stop donating to this guy, we're just going to stop donating to everybody, at least in the interim. They didn't say they were going to make it a full-time thing. They're what they say? They said they were going to review and see, look into their policies, blah 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 blah. But if you if you look at some of that stuff, I mean, I would have, as a store manager, I would have said, I need you to get off the sidewalk. You can't be laying here. And if they said it's all right, blah blah blah, I would have had the police come get them trespassing because I asked them to leave. I think they should have been taken out of there in handcuffs. But maybe the manager didn't want to make a scene. Maybe he was worried that corporate would not be happy that he sent, these people that have been on TV so much packing. And, who knows why they didn't ask him to leave or why they didn't have him escorted off the property or what. But my understanding is the reports that I heard were saying that people were literally stepping over them to get in and out of the store and didn't care. And I say good. Because it's a grocery store, people. It'd be different if they were doing this in front of a gun store or a gun factory or an ammunition factory or a gun show or something like that. It's a grocery store. People just want to get their groceries. They don't want this stuff. So, I mean, it's pathetic.
Yeah, it's absolutely pathetic. And I would have had their asses arrested for blocking access to my store, frankly. I would have had them summons for trespassing and been done with it.
Then you would have to arrest every parent that ignores their kid when they throw a fit.
Yeah.
You ever seen those kids that throw a fit, drop on the ground, start screaming on the floor?
Yeah, though, that's pretty much what they were doing.
Same thing.
Man, teenagers are assholes, especially that hog kid.
Yeah. Well, you know what I do for a living. I'm not going to disagree with you on a teenagers are assholes thing. Of course, that keeps a roof over my head. So, yay, teenagers.
Yeah, I don't get the whole protesting on the floor thing and like they're all dead. It's like, okay, well, you're all dead. We're just going to step over you, and that's kind of being ignored. So,
I think I would have leaned over and said, well, what are you doing? And when this is a die-in, what's a die-in? Well, it's like a set-in, but instead we're going to lay here and pretend to be dead. Oh, okay, why? Oh, because we're protesting all the deaths in the school. And then I'd say, well, if your teachers were armed, you probably wouldn't be dead. Have a nice day. And then kept going. I mean...
That's one of those rare occasions where I would actually put on a kilt, no underwear, just faces.
Nice. Show them your haggis.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I might actually drop my keys and have to bend over and pick something up right above their face.
That's great.
Look, I respect people's right to assemble. I respect their right to protest. I respect their their right to an opinion. I do. The problem I have is these are kids. They haven't lived any life yet. They're not even old enough to vote yet. And as far as I'm concerned, they really don't have an opinion. Their parents need to be the ones out there doing this and saying, son, daughter, I'm doing this for you. But you don't see their parents out there doing it. It's the kids, because the parents are manipulating the kids. These organizations, these anti-gun organizations are manipulating the kids. And the kids are letting them, because the kids are getting all kinds of stuff. They're getting publicity, and they're paying for their travel and all this other stuff. Plus, if they're doing this, they don't have to work a job like we did when we were teenagers.
I mean, but in all reality, they're just really just an annoyance. I mean, what they're doing.
That's true. And the parents really aren't teaching them anything. They're not teaching them any values, but that's just the way it is.
Like, I get it.
My problem with the whole thing isn't that they're protesting. It isn't that they're participating in the political process. I think that's great. Everybody has a right to do that. If they were walking a picket line out on the sidewalk and chanting and raising hell and protesting like that, that's fine. But you don't block the entrance to somebody's business. You just don't do it. Bad form, as Hook would say.
Yeah. I mean,
but also the fact that the business has nothing to do with what they're protesting. It's such a loose connection to go, well, they donated to this politician, and this politician's pro-2A. But did they donate because he's pro-2A? Well, no, they donated because he's for tax cuts, and tax cuts would mean that the business would be able to make more money. Okay, then your whole point is mute. I mean, it just is. So,
yeah. Patriot in the Dark says, I don't think he sees the NRA. He just sees the lights and cameras. Yeah, and you're probably right. Right. It's just they're being attention whores at this point.
David the camera hog.
Yep. trying to extend that 15 minutes that's already been extended into 20 or 30. They want at least 45.
Yeah. I mean, the whole protesting thing in general, I mean, when you see, if you've ever driven around and actually seen a protest, it's more of just like one of those, it's like something that you just look at and you're like, whatever. You know, it's like the whole protesting thing is just an annoyance.
Yeah. David Pointer says, I would have had a need for eggs. Oops, I didn't mean to drop them on you while you lay on the floor.
Clean up on Al too.
Oopsie. All right.
Oh, hey, one more thing.
Go ahead.
What if somebody had tripped over one of these kids, fallen, smashed their face on the pavement, and then sued Publix for allowing them to be there? Wouldn't that be, I mean, I don't want to see anybody get hurt, but I'm just saying.
Yeah,
irony.
I would have had the liability in that case.
Yeah.
That's actually a good point. These kids are laying there, impeding access, impeding foot traffic. If someone
wouldn't that be
trip and hurt themselves, who's liable? Is it Publix or is it the kids that are protesting?
So are these kids talking about there isn't enough safety in school by preventing safety in front of a grocery store? Not well thought out.
Yeah, that's exactly what they did. That is a very good point. I really have to ask my brother what he thinks about that one. He's the lawyer in the family, not me.
I think it was Mitch Hedberg that said it best. I'm against protesting, but I don't know how to show it.
Night Strike, how you doing, buddy?
Oh, hey, how's it going?
Oh, not too shabby. Just got done talking about how Publix stopped all political giving in response to the Hogsters protest that they were giving to a Pro 2A candidate.
Oh, hey, it's Night Strike, the man who beat out G-Webs.
That's right.
Well,
all hail the king, baby.
Well, he certainly has proven his namesake.
Oh, yeah.
You know, hog, greed.
Yep.
You know, his greed is shown, and, you know, Publix, instead of taking into, you know, political bullying, they said, yeah, you know what? No, we're just going to cut everybody off.
Yep. From what Squib says, that Hogg even demanded that Publix give him or his organization $1 million, and that's when they said, yeah, no. I don't think so, Dave.
Yeah, he went to Publix and he went to a few other companies. I can't remember what they were. They talked about it on We Like Shooting. They had a lot more detail on it, and yeah, I believe that was who I heard explain it in more detail. And none of these companies are giving him anything.
I read an article off of Amaland on this, and it's just, I thought it was hilarious that instead of him getting what he wants, they're like, you know what? We're just not going to give anybody money. So that means most of the left that weren't with David Hogg, they're also not getting money anymore either.
Yep.
So it's a double-edged sword. Now they're pissed off that they aren't getting money, donations, but it's all his fault. So everybody blame him.
Yep.
But you know they won't. They'll just blame something else entirely that has nothing to do with anything whatsoever, because that's just the twisted thought process of the left.
Yeah. Of course, they'll always find a way to make it somebody else's fault.
Because apparently they're not taught to take responsibility. Period.
Nope. That's one of the beauties of being a liberal, is that you don't have to take responsibility for anything. It's always somebody else's fault. You're always a victim. You're from North Carolina, aren't you, Night Strike?
I'm not from North or South Carolina. I just live in South Carolina.
You live in South Carolina, okay.
I live in the better
I'm the one that's
Carolinas.
I'm the one that, oh, bull crap. I lived in both. North Carolina's better. I'm the one that's from North Carolina.
South Carolina's better.
Okay, well, this next piece is out of North Carolina by WBTV. It says, Thieves scouting for NRA decals in North Carolina car thefts. Huntersville, North Carolina. Thieves in the Huntersville area are targeting supporters of the NRA and other gun enthusiasts lately. Police say they are scouting for gun-related stickers on cars in parking lots, then busting into those cars and taking the guns for themselves. Any type of sticker, Lieutenant Jason Kosar says. NRA stickers, hunting stickers. Kusar says that local lots have been littered with pro-gun decals on cars. For gun looters, it is a hot target. It's happening pretty frequently, he says. Thieves will scout restaurants, movie theaters, neighborhoods, anywhere for these decals before busting in. They're pretty foxy, Larry Hyatt says. They'll figure it out. Hyatt owns a local gun shop. These thefts are why he tells every one of his customers not to put gun-related decals on their rides. You might be letting people know you're a gun owner, but it might be the wrong people, he says. Hyatt has known these thefts to happen at local sporting events and advises caution as race fans from all over take over Charlotte in just a few days. They're used to their rural lifestyle, he says, of visitors. They got their NRA sticker on. They got their gun locked up in the truck. Come out, their truck's broken into, and their gun's gone. Kosar says officers will keep a close eye over the weekend. I don't want to see the wrong people get their hands on guns and potentially harm an innocent person, he says. He says the biggest issue they have is people not having gun vaults for their car or just keeping their entire car unlocked. And that is exactly why I don't put an NRA sticker on my car. It's why I don't even have, honestly, I don't even have my Budget Guns and Gear Review sticker on my car.
There's something to be said about keeping a low profile and not having any sort of political or any sticker or identifier on your car other than a license plate so that people just see it as a random nondescript car and move along.
Yep.
How about just not leaving a firearm in your vehicle, please?
Sometimes you
That's
have
what I was
to.
gonna say. That's
Sometimes I do a lot. I mean, and here's the deal. It doesn't really only have to do with just firearms, because there was a lot of guys who used to hang out when we used to build cars and stuff. When you put like nothing but Alpine and Kenwood and all these decals with all these upgrades that you have on your car, that's just advertisement.
Hey, I've got shit to rob.
Yeah.
well, yeah, but how else do you add horsepower besides a bunch of stickers?
Well, stickers.
Yeah,
Every sticker
but,
adds horsepower.
Didn't you see that Simpsons episode? All you have to do is add holes to your hood, and you're fine.
But anyway, if people are dumb enough not to lock up their stuff, then I think that's on them. If you don't lock up your stuff, don't be surprised when somebody takes it.
That's true.
It's just a big stupid idea.
Yeah, but even locked up, you can break into them real easy. It's not hard to break into a vehicle. All I'm saying is if you leave it in there,
hide it.
If you leave anything in there, if you leave your laptop in there, if you leave anything in there, if you leave a piece of paper with all your account numbers and passwords in your vehicle, and something happens to it, I mean, whether you locked it up or not, locking up and having a security system and all these other things, they're great precautions. But at the end of the day, you hear about stuff like this happening. Somebody left a laptop in their vehicle and they had a bunch of sensitive information, and somebody stole the car and they got their hands on a laptop. I don't know when was the last time I heard about a vehicle getting stolen out of a police cruiser, but I'm sure it's happened. A firearm being stolen out of a police cruiser, but I'm sure it's happened. I mean, there are things that happen. I just don't understand why somebody would say, you know what, now that I'm home for the evening, I'm going to just leave this gun in the glove box all night, and tomorrow morning when I drive to work, it'll be there, and I don't have to take it into the house, for Pete's sakes.
Actually, that's a prime example.
And it's just,
my wife has a friend of hers. My wife has a friend of hers, and she carries a revolver all the time, which, good for her because she's actually carrying. But what like you just said, is that she would leave it in the car, not overnight, but wherever she goes. And I do believe it might have been overnight, but they robbed her car and took it right out of her glove box. But see, if you're going to hide something in a car, you make sure you really, really freaking hide it, because if you find a gun vault, if you want something bad enough, you can get it. But if you hide it well enough, you can't really find it. And most people break into cars want to get in and out right away.
Yeah. I was going to say, breaking into a car, like you're like, this guy has guns. It might be a good idea for me to be in a position where he can legally use them on me.
Oh, yeah.
It just seems super duper ballsy. And those guys aren't going to be deterred.
No, those guys usually post up at no gun stickers places all the time. Just waiting for those guys that are advertising, like the NRA stickers and the stickers that show guns instead of people, stick figures. Yep. Oh yeah, they're just waiting for that stuff in gun-free zones.
Yep, that's a good point. They wait outside the gun-free zones, see someone with a sticker with an NRA sticker that goes into that area. Pretty good chance they have a gun and they can't take it in there, so they leave it in their car. Let's get that car. Yeah, yep. That's why the only thing I have on my vehicles, any stickers of any type, other than my license plate, would be the memorial sticker for my daughter. Other than that, nothing. because I want to keep the low profile. And if I happen to leave my firearm in my car, I try to make sure that it's hidden. You know, it's locked up. It's under the seat. It's not in plain view to tempt some asshole that walks past and just might decide, I'm going to bust the window and get that.
You literally have to rip apart every panel in my car to be able to find out where I'm hiding that thing.
And that's the smart way to do it. And speaking of Charlottesville is also in the news.
Charlottesville is not in North Carolina, though. You're thinking of Charlotte, North Carolina.
Charlotte. Okay, yeah, my bad. At any rate, this is Charlottesville, so this is in Virginia. Well, Charlottesville, there's at least that connection anyway. If you guys remember the rally they had, free speech, quote unquote, rally with where that person got ran over by the car, etc., and there was some hijinks between the protesters and the other group of protesters. Well, federal suit against city and police about the August 12th, this would be of last year, is dismissed. This is by the Daily Progress from May 29, 2018. A federal judge on Tuesday dismissed a lawsuit filed against the city of Charlottesville, its former police chief, and the former superintendent of the Virginia State Police after the deadly white nationalist rally in the city last summer. In his lawsuit, Robert Sanchez Turner alleged that local and state police commanders, led by then City Police Chief Al Thomas and then VSP Superintendent Colonel W. Stephen Flaherty, violated his and others' civil rights on August 12th by failing to prevent the violence that day. Turner alleged that he was the victim of violence that was witnessed by officers who did nothing to stop the fracas that ensued for nearly an hour before authorities declared the event to be an unlawful assembly and ordered everyone in and around Emancipation Park to disperse. Plaintiffs' claims share a common question: whether there is a constitutional duty under the 14th Amendment for the police to intervene to protect a citizen from criminal conduct by third parties. Judge Norman K. Moon's opinion says, because I find this duty is not clearly established, his claims are barred by qualified immunity. Qualified immunity shields government officials in certain circumstances from being sued over incidents that occurred while they are acting within their official capacities. In other words, once again, the courts have upheld the premise that the police have no duty to protect an individual, period. That is why having the ability to protect yourself is so critical, because no one else is going to do it for you.
So what? I mean, I've heard this before and I believe it, but why do we, accept that they exist?
Because they're here to punish somebody and find out who did it after they kill you and after they beat your ass or after they steal from you. They have no legal responsibility to prevent anything from happening. They can, in fact, just stand by and watch.
So then based on that, then shouldn't that be enough to warrant constitutional carry nationwide? And shouldn't that be enough to where the burden of proof, the whole innocent till proven guilty thing kind of should be invoked really strong as if you did have to defend yourself and use lethal force? I mean, if they aren't there to protect you, then I don't understand how they can have that, but you can also get locked up for defending yourself.
Yeah, it staggers me, but there it is. That's the whole underpinning and the whole reason for Second Amendment. That's the whole reason for having the right to carry a weapon in for defense, is because no one else is responsible to do it. If they choose to do it, awesome. If they don't, well, hey, they don't have to. It's crazy. I mean, that's why, the lawsuits against the Broward Coward, I don't think they're going to go anywhere because, frankly, while he had a human duty to protect those kids, he had no legal duty to do so.
Yeah, unfortunately, you're probably right about that. The same thing if you sued the school or you sued the police or whatever. Who's paying it? The taxpayers.
Yep.
The chief of police isn't going to pay. The superintendent isn't going to pay. So it's unfortunate.
Rooston said the Second Amendment doesn't grant us the right; it guarantees it. You're absolutely correct. I hate to use the word codifies, but and I hate to use the word recognizes. It just simply states that we have this pre-existing right.
It states that the government can't take it from us.
Exactly.
But wait. Yeah, I'll get back to you on that.
Yeah. Apparently, the English language has changed, and shall not doesn't mean what it used to. But that's it. You can't rely on anybody but you. And that's why you should have a weapon and be able to use it. Of course, across the pond, they don't necessarily understand that. In the land of the spotted dick, they have taken away those rights from everyone. They have made it very difficult for someone to defend themselves. They have stripped, for all practical purposes, the English and the folks in all over the United Kingdom of their right to defend themselves and right to use firearms to do so. And, well, the nanny state there is getting even worse. Piece by the Daily Mail by Laura Forsyth. Judge calls for 10-inch pointed kitchen knives to be ground down to a rounded end after hearing 3 serious stabbing cases in the last 3 months. This is on May 27th. A judge has called for a drastic rethink on the way we use knives in kitchens in a bid to reduce the number of young men dying on our streets because of knife crime. And he has come up with an idea for a scheme that could be rolled out across the UK, where members of the public could take their kitchen knives to be modified and the points ground down into rounded ends. This comes from Judge Nick Madge, who last month jailed Jordan Worth of Stewartby, Bedfordshire, for 7.5 years after she inflicted a catalog of injuries on her boyfriend, Alex Skeel. Petite Worth, 22, stabbed him with a knife, scalded him with boiling water, banned him from their bed, and decided what clothes he should wear. Judge Madge has now come out to say that the use of headline-grabbing Rambo knives and samurai swords was relatively rare, and it was the points of ordinary kitchen knives that was causing the soaring loss of life among youngsters.
You know, you're going to see this exact same thing happening here if they ever get around to trying to actually ban AR-15s, and they're going to be like, oh, wait, it wasn't the AR-15s that were doing all this. It was handguns.
Yep. Well,
yeah, but here's the thing. For those out there who know how to use a knife, if you take the point off of it, but it still has a sharp blade, you can still... Right. So this is just more lip service.
Arguably even more deadly.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, after they take away their knives, what are they going to be down to? Stabbing each other with number 2 pencils?
Well, they'll take the pencils, too. They'll have them use flexible suicide pencils, like we do at in the jail. Why do we need 8-inch or 10-inch kitchen knives with points? Butchers and fishmongers do, but how often, if at all, does a domestic chef use the point of an 8 or 10-inch knife? Rarely, if at all, he said. At the moment, police forces hold amnesties where bins are placed outside police stations and members of the public can get rid of lethal weapons, no questions asked. Judge Madge's idea is for everyone to be able to take knives from their kitchen drawers to centers where the points would be filed down.
Sound familiar, though, doesn't it? What are you, if you're not a professional fishmonger or butcher, what do you need an 8 or 10-inch knife for? Oh, well, if you're not law enforcement or military, what do you need an AR-15 for? It just echoes familiarity.
Yeah, and this is the logical extensions of the arguments that we're hearing now. That's why I brought this up. Even though this is happening in England, you know, it's relevant to the political debate here, because these are the exact same arguments we're hearing here, and this is where they want to head it. If you don't think that they'll head down this path, you are delusional at best. At best, you're delusional. Cheating with Uncle Dan says, oh, well, don't give up nothing. Cold dead hands, I'm out. I'm with you. Roosted says he uses a cleaver, so I'm good. Well, that's just a high-capacity assault chopping knife, and they'll take that too. Don't think for a second they won't take your cleaver. Don't know if you've been listening, Night Strike.
No, I had to step away.
In Great Britain, there is a judge who is wanting to mandate that 8 or 10-inch kitchen knives be filed down to blunt points so that people can't stab each other. He actually used the argument. Well, here, let me reread the reread the appropriate passages. But why do we need 8-inch or 10-inch kitchen knives with points? Butchers and fishmongers do, but how often, if at all, does a domestic chef use the point of an 8 or 10-inch knife? Rarely, if at all, he said.
I'm calling fake news because you said 8 or 10-inch kitchen knife. They're on the metric system over there, so fake news.
This is from the Daily Mail. Go check it.
I'm just messing with you. Doggone metric system. Who uses that anymore?
I can't believe it. Roosted says, so a 6-inch pointy knife is safer than an 8-inch knife. Yeah, exactly. Well, you know, a 38 safer than a Glock, right? Oh, wait a minute. You could still do a lot of damage with a 38, can't you? Patriot says not smart enough to resharpen a knife. That's the English for you. Well, yeah. I mean, they're getting the government they have voted for over the years. But guess what's happening here? We're getting the government we vote for in certain places. It's horrible. Philos, I'm going to go ahead and say this. Philo says rape is up in England. How long before they start asking how long everyone's pecker really needs to be? And that, I'm sure they'll get there.
They can have them removed. They got social medicine, so they'll just be on a waiting list for 6 months to a year to have it happen.
No kidding. That's
I don't like the English. I don't like the English.
I don't like the English either, but I'm pretty sure, and this is way back in the day, but I think around King John's time there was some law put in place besides the Magna Carta. Besides that one, there was some law put in place where they had the right to defend themselves or something.
They used to,
and right now you could cite that law and say that the current English law is breaking that law. But again, you know, they'll say, well, that's from 400 years ago. What basis does that have on today's world? And I go, and you just have to look at what's going on around you in order to say, are you really fucking asking that question? And excuse the language, of course.
Yeah, they
But again, there's a reason why we broke away from that country in the first place. And you know what? There's another good reason for us not to be like them.
Didn't gun confiscation have something to do with that?
That was with King...
Dude guy.
The king of England at the time during the Revolution, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they tried to... Yeah, here's the funny thing. You remember the shot heard from around the world?
Yeah.
Yeah. That actually happened in, I believe, Connecticut.
Yeah.
And Connecticut is trying to take guns away from the people.
Yep.
And
they apparently
the British tried to do that, and what happened? We revolted.
They
and Connecticut's doing that, and what are they doing? They're basically turning the other cheek.
Yep.
So...
Turn the other cheek, it generally means you get slapped twice.
And you don't get the reach around.
Oh, Maron.
But I'm sorry, but it was so appropriate to say.
Someone said...
Night Strike in rare form, ladies and gentlemen.
Someone said earlier about pretty soon they'll twig to the fact that it's handguns and not rifles that are being used the majority of the time There's a piece out in the Washington Times that actually points that out. Widespread use of handguns in mass shootings undercuts push to ban semi-automatic rifles by David Sherfinsky from the Washington Times, May 29, 2018. Handguns are almost 3 times as likely to be used in mass shootings as rifles, according to a new report from Gun Safety Group that appears to cut against gun control advocates' push to ban some semi-automatic rifles. More than 3/4 of mass shootings from 1996 to 2016 involved a handgun, while just 29% of shooters used a rifle, according to the New York-based Rockefeller Institute, part of a gun safety initiative convened by a handful of mostly Democratic governors. Some shooters, such as the attack at a Texas school earlier this month, carried both a handgun and a long gun. The relatively small percentage of mass shootings involving rifles busts one of the myths of the gun debate, the new study said. I think it would come as a surprise to a lot of people, said Robert J. Spitzer, a political science professor at SUNY Cortland, who is a part of the research arm of the multi-state gun group, though he didn't write this new report. He added, though, that the use of rifles is on the rise in high-profile mass shootings and said they often account for a higher death toll in shootings. For example, last year's Vegas shooter would not have been able to do what he did with a couple of handguns, Mr. Spitzer said. Police say Stephen Paddock killed 58 people and injured hundreds of others when he opened fire from his hotel window down into a music festival. Authorities found in Paddock's hotel room several bump stock devices used to convert semi-automatic weapons into automatic-style ones. Their words, not mine. Their words, not mine. We all know that's bullshit. So for those kinds of reasons, there's a legitimate...
Because you can't hit the broadside of a barn using a bump stock.
Exactly. So
you could if you're inside the barn.
That's debatable.
Yeah, but here's the thing, though. Okay, if they're gonna say he was able to commit that crime because he used long guns instead of a handgun, he also had a pilot's license, and you can rent a Cessna, so he could have done even more damage with a rental airplane.
Yep.
So the whole handgun versus rifle, the plane trumps it. So I just, these people don't think.
Nope. So for those kinds of reasons, there is a legitimate public policy reason to focus on assault weapons, but it's also important not to take your eye off the fact that handguns are indeed more often used, Mr. Spitzer said. Second Amendment supporters said the findings should derail efforts to enact stricter laws, such as a ban on certain semi-automatic rifles, in the wake of last year's worth of high-profile massacres. Given that the left is on a jihad to demonize the fictional assault weapon, it was refreshing to see the Rockefeller report set the record straight on handguns, said Eric Pratt, executive director of Gun Owners of America. The report was the first one from a regional gun violence research consortium organized earlier this year by the governors of New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Delaware, and Puerto Rico. Geez, all they had to add in there was California, and they did pretty much hit all the anti-gun states. The governor's offices did not answer questions about the report Tuesday, though New York Governor Andrew Cuomo did provide a recent link to it on social media, saying the group is supporting critical research to better understand mass shootings and how to prevent them. Connecticut Governor Daniel Malloy said more research on the subject is desperately needed and that he looked forward to reviewing the report. He said Republicans in Congress folded to the will of the NRA by routinely including language in spending bills that's been interpreted as an effective ban on government research into gun violence. By working together with like-minded states, we can take strides toward understanding the root causes of violence and determine the most effective strategies to prevent all forms of gun violence, not just mass shootings, Mr. Malloy says.
God, I hate that term.
The study's authors cast it as an initial effort to compile basic information on mass shootings, how often they happen, who commits them, where they're committed, and trends over the past 50 years. The authors define mass shooting as an instance of targeted violence carried out in a public place that resulted in multiple victims, occurred within a 24-hour period, and wasn't gang-related. But they also acknowledge that different groups use different definitions for what they consider to be mass shootings, and said that the lack of uniformity is an obstacle to producing reliable research on the subject. Well, I'm glad they were at least that honest. The study found that mass shootings have steadily increased over the past 50 years, but are still statistically rare. The likelihood of being injured or killed in a mass shooting was about 7 times greater between 2006 and 2016 than it was 40 years earlier, though the average incident rate was still about 0.04 per 100,000 people from 2006 to 2016. Of the 340 mass shootings the report chronicled over the past 50 years, 57% took place either at a workplace or at a school. Nearly all of the shooters, 96%, were male and were 33.4 years old on average. 54% of the shooters were white, compared to 27% who were black, 9% who were Hispanic, and 4% who were Asian. Well, I see that as starting the documentation to let's go after handguns after they get the long guns, or do as much as they think they can on long guns. People are think that this will put paid to the whole gun control thing because, well, they're wrong. It's not rifles. I just think they'll say, yo, shit, it's not rifles. Let's go after these too.
Probably, yeah. But we all know
They
that's
tried
a long
that.
game
They
anyway.
tried that in 1934. They tried to put handguns on the NFA because most criminals have always used handguns. Why? Concealability. That's the main reason. The element of surprise is what's most important for the criminal to commit his crime. And if you can't conceal it, it's going to make it a lot harder. But they weren't put on the NFA. And I can't recall if it was the NRA that had something to do with that, or it was politicians or what, but we come this close to having that become something you need a tax stamp for. So
I believe it was the NRA that stopped that. So they've done something, at least.
that was before they were a political entity. So, that was back when they gave a crap. It's kind of one of those, they're our best friend and our worst enemy both.
Yeah, it's sad that there's that duality there, because in some ways they are our best friend, and in others they are our worst enemy, as evidenced by their statement over the bump stocks, which allowed that to become a thing with for Republicans. It kind of gave them the pass to go ahead and move on bump stocks, and just
Could we call the NRA bipolar?
I think we probably oughta. I think there's still a lot of FUDism in the NRA. All right. Now that we've talked about all that stuff, let's go ahead and talk about some other stuff. I, as usual, like to end this on a high note with some self-defense shout-outs. For those of you who may be new to the show, I am not celebrating anyone's death. I am not celebrating anyone's injury, maiming, wounding, etc. What I am celebrating is the continued life, the continued liberty, and the continued pursuit of happiness of someone who had the means, method, and ability to defend themselves against someone who would have deprived them of any of those. So our first self-defense shout out this week is a piece from Breitbart on May 31st. 16-year-old kills home invader with deer rifle. 16-year-old Ackerman, Mississippi resident used a deer rifle to shoot and kill a home invader Tuesday. The Associated Press reports that Choctaw County Chief Deputy Lee Upchurch identified the deceased individual as Jerry Lee Robinson. He said Robinson tried to make entry into the home while holding a hatchet and then made an aggressive move towards the 16-year-old. The Miami Herald reports that the teen then fired one shot at Robinson with a .270 rifle. Officers arrived on scene to find Robinson unresponsive. Robinson, the uncle of the 16-year-old who shot him, had allegedly threatened the family 2 weeks before. The boy's mother told WCBI, "I have some videos where he came into my yard with 2 machetes threatening my husband and everything." The mother added, "Yeah, my son defended himself. It could have been the other way around. It could have been my son, the one I'm picking up and having to bury, but it wasn't." And this is the argument for allowing your teenage children who have been properly trained and properly taught to have access to the weapons in your house. I know that since the shooting in Texas that there has been some debate on that, whether you should, whether you shouldn't, whether, you know, kids should ever have access to your guns. But this scenario would seem to argue that if the child is responsible enough to do so, you should allow them access. Thoughts?
If you know your kids well, you know what they're capable of, and you also know where they're at with something as serious as life and death. Some kids couldn't defend their family. Some kids could, but some kids also might do something bad with them. You got to know your kids. I mean, I don't think the government should come into our homes and tell us what we need to do, how we need to raise our kids, or whether or not we need to lock up our guns. Now, I'm always talking about gun safes because you hear about people getting them and you wonder what the heck was going on. Well, it's, you know, the person doesn't have them locked up, whatever it is, whether they were stolen or whether, you know, from a home invasion, or whether it was a kid getting their hands on them. And I mean, I don't understand the people who say, you know, they my kid would never be capable of this. I mean, know your kids. I mean, my guns are all locked up. My kids would not do something like that, but mine are still locked up. But that's my personal preference. Just because you don't do what I do, I don't think that I should be able to dictate, nor should the government dictate. But I will say this: anybody who says they can't afford a gun, and then they talk about the new rifle they bought, or not, they can't afford a gun safe, and then the next thing they talk about the new rifle they just bought, it's like, dude, there was your gun safe. So whatever. I do think the government should give tax breaks for people who buy the safes, whether they own guns or not, whether they report they have guns or not, whether they buy it and all they do is they put their personal effects in there. I think they should give tax breaks to people who purchase these gun safes as incentive to get people to buy them.
I think that's a brilliant idea.
But if you have the combination written down, if you have the combination written down and it's in the junk drawer with everything else, your kid's going to find it. If your combination is your birthday, your kid's going to figure it out. Well, maybe not. Kids today aren't as smart as they used to be, but whatever. Excuse me.
Wow.
You've got to make sure that you safeguard that combination if you do get a safe. And for the people who say, I don't have kids, therefore I don't want to lock up my guns, that's good and fine. But if somebody does break into your home or your car and takes off with all your guns, don't come crying to me because, hey, whatever. And even then, if somebody really wanted to, you could get a crew of guys to come in there with a dolly and some straps and haul away all your big heavy safes if they really wanted to. So, I mean, there you can just, you know, you can add layer upon layer. You can put cameras in your house. You can do this, you can do that. It's up to each individual. I don't ever want to see that get legislated. But know your kids. If you think your kid might even be capable, if your kid might fly off at the handle or seems to be hiding something, I mean, come on, people. I don't know.
No, I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's ultimately up to the parent to know and understand the state of mind of their child. You have to know your kid. If your kid's capable and responsible and even tempered enough, and you know, is it the right frame of mind that he can have access? By all means, if you want to make that decision, go right ahead. But you also know your kid, and you know if he isn't. So you should lock it up if you know what he isn't. I mean, it all comes down to parenting. I know my kids aren't a horrible thing, but
I know my kids aren't, but I choose to lock them up,
and that's
because
your choice.
There's no way. You can never say you get. It's not saying that they. I don't think they would do it, but by doing this, I don't even have to think it. I know they're not. They're not going to have. Yeah. Yeah. And you know, you could have all of your guns. You could have all of your guns locked up, but he may have a friend down the street who lives with his grandpa, and grandpa keeps all his guns, you know, in the garage, and they're not locked up, and you know, he knows it because his friend go, hey man, take a look at all this cool stuff. Now the kid has access to guns because this person has kids in their house or visiting, and they don't take the responsibility. You know, I mean, so even if you take it upon yourself, somebody else may not, and somebody may get access to something that isn't even from their own home.
That's right. Okay, our next self-defense shout-out this week is fast food robbery suspect shot twice by customer in drive-thru. fast food robbery suspect in Santa Ana, California, was shot twice by an unidentified customer who was inside a car at the restaurant's drive-thru. CBS Los Angeles reports the masked suspect walked into the Cozy Corner drive-in around 12:43 a.m. Saturday morning. He approached the front counter, handed the cashier a bag, and demanded money from the cash register. Police said he was holding a black revolver. As he grabbed the bag of money and turned to leave, shots rang out from the drive-thru window, striking the robbery suspect twice and knocking him to the ground. He was able to scramble out of the building and cross the street, where he was apprehended by police. The robbery suspect was bleeding from the upper body when police came upon him, and he was transported to the hospital for treatment. The car from which the shots were fired fled the scene before police arrived, so details about the shooter are unknown. So, well, hey, good on you for taking out the bad guy, but I got to wonder if there's not something sketchy about you to begin with because you fled.
Well, the problem is it's California. Even if they did the right thing, guess what? The California punishes the law-abiding, not the criminal.
So maybe discretion was the better part of valor there. Do your good deed and then GTFO.
We are not actually advocating you do that. That would
no.
I'm not advocating anyone do that.
But seriously, do that. Don't do that.
Seriously, don't do it. But it's California. What can you do?
I can understand why in that situation.
And Matt, no offense, of course. I know you live in the worst places, and I apologize, but it's California. You can't blame us.
Dude, I apparently have just had the bad luck of moving around to terrible states for guns. I was stationed in New York, then Hawaii, then I came back to California. So I'm not going to take offense. Okay. I'm part of a small, but, a small stronghold of pro-gun people who still exist here.
By the way, keep on the lookout for mail. I sent you something in the mail.
Oh, I will check my mail now then.
Sean Green apparently agrees with the Unite Strike. He says he fled because in California he'd go to jail for doing the right thing. Yep.
Yeah.
I probably right. And our third and final self-defense shout-out this week. Police. Worcester store clerk shoots would-be robber 3 times from WDH7 News in Boston by Matt Rascon. Worcester, Mass. A Worcester store clerk shot a would-be robber 3 times over the weekend after he held a customer hostage with a large knife, police said. Officers responding to 49 Vernon Street Saturday around 8:40 p.m. found 26-year-old Juan Ajorio of Worcester, not Worcester. What the hell, Kreitzer?
Worcester.
Of Worcester, suffering from 3 non-life-threatening gunshot wounds, police said. A clerk at the No Name Grocery, that's a great name for his store, No Name Grocery, shot Ajorio as he attempted to rob the store, according to police. The store clerk had said he pulled out his personal firearm when Ajorio held a knife to a female customer's neck. When the customer dropped to the ground, the clerk fired 3 rounds at Ajorio, prompting him to drop his knife and flee the store. The clerk chased after him and ordered him to the ground before checking on the customers inside the store. Worcester EMS arrived and treated Ajorio for his wounds before transporting him to a local hospital. The clerk and 2 female customers were not hurt. Detectives recovered the knife used in the attack at the scene, police said. Worcester residents said the alarming attempted robbery left them rattled. I was very shocked that somebody in our neighborhood would do this to our own store, said Amy Burquest, who heard the gunfire. Ajorio was charged with assault and battery with a dangerous weapon, assault with a dangerous weapon, and armed assault with the intent to rob. His arraignment will be based on when he is released from the hospital. Unfortunately, he had got shot, and now he has to deal with the consequences, concerned customer Ron Presley said. I wouldn't say unfortunately. Now he'll sit on it in the hospital, and when he goes to jail, trust me, he'll wake up. The investigation into the incident is ongoing, and police say additional charges may be filed. Hopefully not against the store clerk. He is in Massachusetts, so it's hard to say. But good on him for possibly saving that woman's life.
Yeah, that guy deserved it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little unnerving at first when you're like, oh, the dude had a knife to her throat. But, there's a chance she was going to die anyway. And, I mean, it looks like she was able to drop out of the way. So, good for them.
I don't blame him. If I were in that situation, I think if I saw the hostage drop out of the line of fire, I believe I would probably shoot him too. Hopefully, I'm never in that situation. Hopefully, I never am forced to make that choice. All right, so gonna go ahead and close this out. Thank you to everybody who stuck around to view this, and everyone who's come to listen and see what we had to say. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate my panel. Thank you guys very much for dropping by and being part of this conversation tonight. Let me go ahead and run through the room, see if you guys have anything to add. 50 caliber Karma. Matt, what do you have to say? Anything?
Hit or miss Tuesday nights, 9 o'clock.
There you
Shall
go.
not be infringed.
Shall not be infringed.
I was going to say, you know darn well you're not going to steal Night Strike's thunder. Speaking of Night Strike, other than shall not be infringed, is there anything you'd like to add, sir?
Yeah, hey, if you do stuff on YouTube, if you are a YouTube content creator, come on over to guntube.org and register and upload some of your videos.
I keep forgetting to do that.
You already have an account.
I'm even a Patreon supporter of GunTube, and
You already have an account. You're already set up.
I keep forgetting to upload, man. I have to
I have
rectify
videos
that
on GunTube.
I would also like to mention that you can also set your YouTube videos to unlisted and still list them on guntube.org, and only on guntube.org are they accessible. Just in case you don't want to be searchable on YouTube. Just FYI.
Well, we'll have to keep that in mind. Roll calls or anything you'd like to say, sir?
Thanks for having me, and that's about it.
All righty. Squib, do you have anything you'd like to add, sir?
Yeah, later tonight, Gelsma Outdoors should be having a show. I think it's called is it Fins, Fur, and Firearms or something. I can't remember.
I think it's Fish, Fur, and Firearms.
Okay, there you go. And then Heavy B might be having a Friday night site tonight. I don't know. And then even later, Edge of the Week with Edge 4006. That would probably be closer to about 11:30 p.m. Eastern. He doesn't always do a show every Friday, but I don't know, tune in. He might. And then tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Eastern, Caliber Corner, Travis P11.
All right. As always, I'm going to go ahead and plug Gun Channels. If you are not a Gun Channels member, go on over to Gun Channels. Join. It is free. It is like the water cooler of the YouTube gun community. Over there, you will find, well, not just YouTube, but the internet gun community. Over there, you will find like-minded people to talk guns and related subjects with at any and all hours of the day. You can watch most of us who have live streams will simulcast on Gun Channels, and the chat generally seems to move faster over there as far as being able to respond. So that's particularly important when you are trying to win stuff on these live streams. As always, gonna pimp this show, The Right of the People, every Friday night at 7. Although on June 22nd, there will not be a Right of the People. I am going to go camping on a hiking trip that weekend, and I'm leaving Friday morning. And I will be completely out of cell phone service. There is absolutely none where we're going, so I won't even be able to live stream anything from mobile.
Yay.
So if somebody wants to be enterprising and jump in and fill the time slot, go right ahead. And as always, make sure that you let your elected representatives and Congress critters know what you think. Send them telephone, telegraph, email, snail mail, carrier pigeon, smoke signals, heliograph, semaphore, anything and everything that you can think of to let them know what you think about what they're trying to do. Do it. Never, ever, ever give up the fight.